what the hell is up. I mean, news travels a little slowly, I guess. I guess the reports of that, the issues, whatever you want to call it, inside the NHL Players Association. Some described it as a witch hunt. I don't know if that's the case. And I said, well, I'm going to have Elliotte Friedman on, so I'm going to ask him what's going on there. And so before we deal with some of the 30 Thoughts things, I'm just interested in your take in that whole situation. What do you make of that? Does it lead anywhere? Is there any suggestion that there's a challenge to Donald Fehr's stewardship of the NHLPA?
I think there's a challenge. I think the question we don't have the answer to yet, Jeff, is if it goes anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I bet you we probably won't have a clear answer until the fall. I know a lot of the players, they try to get away in the summer, and the agents do try to give their players some time in the summer to recharge and refresh. And I think we're going to find out if there's going to be any change early next season, because the Players Association does go on a tour where they meet with all the teams, and maybe that's going to be the time when we find out if his position is in any serious jeopardy. I spent a bit of time in the last little while looking into, the cap and the future and what the revenues were, and I think the biggest battle they face is the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar, since we came out of the last lockout, has gone down about 25%. And I still think they're growing in revenue. I'm under the impression they grew in revenue 9% this year, but the Canadian dollar has kept the cap a bit down. Mm-hmm. And so, people say the NHL isn't growing. I don't know if I'd agree. I wouldn't agree with that. I think it is growing, but the Canadian dollar certainly has an effect, and it has been an effect. And as a result, the cap really isn't going up as much as we used to see it. And I do think, in the last CBA, the escrow has hammered the players. I think they're very disappointed about the Olympics. And I think between the escrow and the Olympics, two areas where the NHL outmaneuvered the Olympics thing is just a shame. I don't want to say it's outmaneuvered, but the escrow thing was definitely an outmaneuvering. And I think that's why there's unrest. I had a long talk with it about a player, and he made a really good point to me. I think it's a very fair point too, Jeff. It's that, you look at us and you say, okay, we signed a $5 million a year contract. We don't know how much our contract is really worth, because the escrow can change.
That's a great point.
The percentage can change 4 times in a year, and I understand that frustration.
No, and I had honestly, Elliotte, I've never heard it put that way, but I understand it completely as well. And it's that, it's people are going to be rolling their eyes and going, well, come on, it's $5 million. But I mean, you still budget, and you like to know what you're going to make.
And not everybody's making $5 million. I mean, I realize athletes are paid very well, but I think, he said to me, like, how would you feel if you didn't know how much you were making this year and it could be changed 4 times in the year? You'd be annoyed. So I get it.
But it seems to me, Elliotte, that escrow is one of those things. Once you let it in, it's like a salary cap. Once you let it in, it's awfully hard to get rid of it, isn't it?
The horse is out of the barn.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
From Donald Fehr's point of view, I look at the whole Olympic thing, and it seems to me that and I know you talked about the NHL outmaneuvering the Players Association, and then you kind of pulled it back a little bit, because I just think the Olympics is such yes, that's what I meant.
It's just a shame.
Exactly.
It's a shame. It's unfortunate.
That's
nobody wins
what I was
going to
say. But do you think maybe Donald Fehr underestimated just how important the Olympics are to players, and that it's almost one of the things where, okay, yeah, I'll listen to the economic argument a little bit, but it's still the Olympics. There's some things that it's almost like motherhood, right? And do you think maybe he underestimated that?
I would say no, simply because, as you know, Jeff, from baseball, he's always placed big emphasis on international play. Like, he had a lot to do, obviously, with the World Baseball Classic. So I find it hard to say he underestimated it. He's admitted that there was a rush to get the deal done in 2013 to save the season, and it kind of got left out. I just wonder if he thought there was no way the league wouldn't go. And he thought they were going to call their bluff. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wondered. Because I'll tell you, I didn't think they were not going to go. I thought at the end of the day they were going to hold their noses in the air and they were going to say they're going to go, and they didn't. And I think they caught a lot of us by surprise. So I wonder if he was one of them.
No, you made a point in your 30 thoughts about the Conor McDavid contract, which is obviously a talking point right out of the season, at the end of the season, I should say, and sort of whether it has legs for other players and whether there'll be a trickle down effect on the league. Is this going to, even the way things are linked in professional sports right now, is there still, do you think, such a thing as an outlier contract?
I think that teams will argue that Conor McDavid is an outlier. As one agent said to me, teams are going to say, look, this is a $12.5 million player who's won an Art Ross, a Hart Trophy as MVP, and a Pearson MVP is voted by the players at age 20. You got that? Then you can get $12.5 million. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest impact it's going to have, and a couple of guys said this, is what does the next level player get? And I thought, and another agent said, players are going to argue, okay, I know I'm not Conor McDavid, but I'm not $6 million worse than Conor McDavid. And I think that's what the GMs are saying, is they know with the next level guys, maybe if John Tavares, if Jonathan Taves was making 10.5, mm-hmm. another guy's making 6.5. Well, now someone's going to say, well, hey, Conor McDavid's making 12.5. I should get 8.5. And that, I think, is where the battle is, the challenge is going to be. And Edmonton is already seeing that. What's Draisaitl's next contract going to be? And I think, and a guy like Ryan Johansson, who's a year away from unrestricted free agency as a number one center, what's his next contract going to be? I think that is going to be the real discussion, Jeff. Not necessarily how many players should be in McDavid's stratosphere, but what that does for the next level group of guys who aren't McDavid, but they're still really good and they can still really help your team.